Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're excited that you can join us for our interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. On today's discussion, we meet three pioneers who are using LEGO and Duplo Bricks to embrace self-care, develop good support systems, release expectations, and practice mindful acceptance. So let's jump into the discussion on this creative approach to engagement. And I have been looking forward to this discussion for quite some time because I stumbled into the power of Legos and bricks and pieces as a tool to help older adults and people with dementia. Not too long ago when I met Loretta Vaney, but I am real excited for Laura and Patty, who have just written a book on this topic, how we can use these bricks to help our loved ones, brick by brick bonding, tools for family care. And I couldn't be more pleased to the fact that we've got all three of these leaders in this space here with us today to have a discussion on how can we use Legos to help our loved ones, and this is going to be really exciting. So let me welcome Laura, Loretta, and Patty to the stage here. And as we do with these discussions, our first step is I'm ready to dive into this discussion, but before we do that, I want to make sure that our audience gets a chance to meet each of you. And Loretta, I'm going to start with you because I met you a few years ago and you turned me on to this Legos thing, and I was been blown away. And the other, I'm going to drop this into chat as well. Tomorrow, I'm going to be introducing Loretta as a keynote speaker at a Kaiser Permanente Thriving After 60 event. I'll drop that in case you want to meet and see Loretta live tomorrow on stage. But Loretta, tell us a little bit about your background and what led you down this path, and then we'll get to meet Patty and Laura and learn a little bit about the book.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me. I love being here, and I love all of the amazing things you bring to us on aging. It's just an amazing group of topics that you present, a little bit of everything. So happy to see that the Lego is included. What a cool thing. And so my story is, fairly simple. I have been a Lego lover my entire life. And so I got my first set when I was 5, never realizing at the time that it would be a lifelong endeavor, for me. So mostly like everybody else, I just did it for fun and did it with my mom, who was my favorite person. And we built through everything. And so it was, no matter what the situation was or the issue, it was all about the Lego. If we were sad, we did Lego. If we were happy, we did Lego. And so it was just Lego. And so when my mother was diagnosed in 2006, I was like, we need to do a different level with the Lego with Mom at that point. And we did that. And so the first reason I knew I was onto something was I asked her to explain how she felt after her dementia diagnosis. And I didn't get words. I got, and so I instead asked her to build how she was feeling. And that turned out to be a momentous occasion. And so she took her little Lego person that I had given her, and I had Legos in my car, and she snapped the head off the Lego figure and held up the body and said, I feel like in a few years, I'm going to lose my head. And I put that on LinkedIn, and people lost it. Like, wow, how profound of her to be able to make that connection. And I think, in Patty's book, he talks a lot about, not only like how to get started, but how you can go in and, get people out. And I can't wait to hear that part of the discussion. But I think one of the greatest lessons in how I started doing this with other people, in addition to my mother, was that one of the greatest lessons she taught us is that when you find something that works, you share it with other people. And so, Lego out into the world, we went, and it was just so much fun with her. I thought we could duplicate that for others. And I certainly think Patty could certainly has experienced that and can certainly speak to that as well. So that's been my journey, and it's taken me lots of places. Who knew this would become such a big thing? So Steve, I am thrilled that you got to experience it in October. That was like the coolest thing ever. So that's my story, and that's how we got started.
Yeah, and what Loretta's referring to is that she ran a workshop for caregivers using Legos, and it was so much fun, and it was amazing, and seeing caregivers and the elders that they're caring with, professionals all playing around, it just really opened my eyes to the power of this, and so you all are behind a movement here that is really exciting. So and every movement needs a book, right? And so Patty and Laura, you all have written this book, Brick by Brick Bonding, and all definitely I've shared your website, and you can see sort of the Amazon page, which I'll drop in there. I know the Amazon makes it so easy for us to just buy anything with the click of a button these days. But but before we dive into the book, Patty and Laura, tell us a little bit about your all's background, what brought you together, and how and why you wrote the book.
Awesome. You want to take that, Laura?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Steve. And yeah, I've been in dementia care, senior in dementia care since 1997. I started out as a certified nurse's aide, and in that time have done a lot of hands-on care. I've been an activity coordinator, care coordinator. I've been the administrator of a memory care facility, and just love dementia care. I love the way that our brains work, and how how we can really get a better sense of that when we see it through dementia. That dementia, it really doesn't take away our human needs, but it almost makes it more clear kind of what they are. It's very, very fascinating to me, and so. In the last several years, I have started writing. I've started consulting with family caregivers directly, virtually, and Patty and I ran into each other on LinkedIn and just had an immediate connection. And she had already pretty much written the book, and she asked me if I would take a look at it. And I did, and I just thought there was so much goodness in it, and we were able to work together to kind of rewrite a little bit and kind of reorganize and really, I think, bring it to what it is now today. And so it's just been a wonderful relationship and a wonderful experience. And so, yeah, I'm just so pleased to be here.
Great. And Patty, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into the book and just Lego talk for our time together here.
That's awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to your audience. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is a pleasure. So my story is a little different than how I started working with folks living with Alzheimer's and dementia. So for decades, I worked in a job where I was miserable, but I had no choice. Today, I have a job I love, but the people I work with have no choice. So I learned a really important lesson along the way. I became a single mom when my daughter was less than 2 years old, but I was fortunate to get a $25 an hour at a job at an investment bank in New York City. But the type of work I did, I really didn't enjoy, but I had great benefits, so I kept working there. When my daughter was on her own and no longer on my health insurance, I quit. Now I didn't have to fit into anybody else's template. I moved from New York City to California, and I chose a new profession. I became a Lego artist, and I started a business sharing the joy of Lego with others. The feeling of regaining my agency and control over my life was exhilarating, but I stumbled onto something completely unexpected. I had a friend who managed a memory care home for people living with Alzheimer's and dementia, and I asked her if I could do a Lego session with her residents using LEGO Duplo Bricks and Pieces, and she loved the idea. I didn't know if it was going to work. No one at the time had done this sort of thing. So when I started, I stood in front of a group of about 6 seniors sitting in wheelchairs around a dining room table. I introduced myself, and not a single person looked up. They had lost their agency to a disease. In the early stages, they lose their agency over their own minds and memories. Then they lose their agency over to make even the smallest decisions, what to eat, what to wear, what time they go to bed. But I continued the session, and I got down to their level, and I spoke to each individual one by one. I spoke to Mary, who is about 80-something years old. I asked her if she was a dog or cat person, but Mary had lost that ability to verbally communicate. Her only response was, "Thank you." I held out a Lego Duplo in one hand, a Lego Duplo dog in one hand, and a Lego Duplo cat in the other to let her choose. But she had lost that ability even to make that choice. So I gave Mary a Lego flower. She took the flower from me. She held it in her hands. She examined it. It was something new in her life that had become institutional and routine. So I showed her how she could stick the flower onto a base plate to make a little scene. And then Mary did something I'd never seen anyone else do before. She put the flower upside down on the table and spun it like a top. At that moment, in that dining room, in that sliver of time, Mary had agency again. She did something for herself. She did something other people didn't expect of her. Maybe she didn't expect it from herself. But I could see it on her face. Her face just lit up. Her thin eyebrows raised, and she clapped her hands together in a moment of pure joy. Then I knew it worked. It worked. It worked to restore joy. It worked to give Mary back a small piece of creativity that she used to enjoy. But it wasn't just Mary. I had done it with hundreds of seniors over and over again, giving them this moment where they restore their agency and the happiness lasts long beyond that session. Even though they can't remember my name, maybe they can't remember sometimes their own families, they remember the Lego lady. They remember the joy they had for that one moment. That's what inspired me to write my book, Brick by Brick Bonding. I want to help families, caregivers, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to experience that same moment of joy with their loved one. It might look like they're just playing with bricks and pieces, but what they're really doing is restoring a moment of agency and building memories.
I love it. What a great story for all three of you. And so now I tell you what, and I think, Patty, I want to give folks a glimpse inside the book. And I think you had a nice table of contents that you could share on the screen. And we can use that as perhaps as a starting point for conversation here, but also give folks an idea of what's in there. And so kind of walk us through the organization of the book and maybe share some insights on the various chapters that we see there on the screen.
Did you see the table of contents on your screen?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Like Laura had mentioned, we met on LinkedIn and I shared the book with her, and it was just such a pleasure to work with her. She is an excellent writer and an expert in dementia care. So, I did this from the perspective of being a Lego artist, right? And just sharing my love, and, it just worked. And like I said in my story, Laura came from the dementia care specialist perspective. And then when we finished the book, we were so proud of it. I shared it with Loretta, and she was so generous and kind to write the foreword. So the book starts with Loretta's story, and she shared a little bit of it earlier when she introduced herself. So I'm so grateful to her for doing that. The hello and welcome is kind of my story, kind of what I shared just a few minutes ago. And then I also go into a little bit more in a little bit more detail about the LEGO community and how I was encouraged and really supported through them as well. Then we go into a little bit about who is a carry, the definition. That came from Denise Brown, who is also an amazing person in this caring community and caregiving community, who I highly recommend. Her definition came from caregivers and wanted a better term for loved one that didn't set any expectations on who you're caring for. Then we go into who is brick by brick bonding for, right? Specifically for caregivers and who are taking care of those living with Alzheimer's and dementia. What are the benefits of brick by brick bonding? We go into the benefits of choice and control, manual dexterity. That I thought I heard something. Sorry. And then what is a brick by brick bonding session? You know, what it is, how do you set it up? You know, that kind of thing. I'll let Laura go into the next. So I think you don't want to hear from me throughout the whole thing. So I thought, Laura, do you want to take the next section?
Oh yeah, absolutely. With the choosing the caregiver journey is so important. You know, when you look at the statistics, obviously caregiving is very, very demanding for people. And the people who are caring, especially 24 hours a day, especially for people with dementia, tend to have, you know, the biggest impact as far as, you know, the health, their mental health, their physical health can suffer. And what research is finding is that when you feel that you don't have a choice in being a caregiver or not, those effects are exponentially greater. And even though it's easy to feel that way, it can be really important and really impactful to take a step back and actually realize that you actually do have a choice. We all have a choice, even if you don't really like the options or if you consider some of them unacceptable. For example, you know, what would happen if you weren't a caregiver, you know, and even if it's as extreme as your parent or your loved one would be like literally living on the street, like that is a choice. You're choosing this over that. So sometimes we have to get really broad perspective at it, but we always do have a choice, and we have the choice to develop our self-care, our support systems, develop our self-care routines. It's not easy, believe me. I know firsthand as well that it really isn't easy, but it is possible, and especially like little steps at a time, we can do this, and that does make a huge difference, not only for us as care partners, but for the people that we're caring for and supporting as well. Their well-being is just intrinsically tied to ours. If we're doing better, then they can do better. So we kind of talk about those concepts there. Preparing to play is really starts to get into the nuts and bolts of, okay, we're ready for a brick by brick bonding session. What does that mean? What does that look like? And, you know, spoiler alert, it's going to look different for every single person, because every person with dementia is different. Every care situation is different. So it's going to look the way it looks for you and your care partner. And so we kind of talk about, you know, those ideas, and give you some places to start and move within. And then talking about making the most of your time, because as we all know, caregivers generally don't have time. We're already doing way too much with the time we have. So it's more crucial than ever that we make sure that we're really mindfully choosing how we spend that time in order to get the most out of it. And so this talks about some of the things like, okay, let's bring in reminiscing therapy, or the different things that we can do to actually really enhance the richness of the benefit that's offered from the session, and as well as just using the time. One of the key tenets of the book is that this time is for us as the care partners as much as it is for the person living with dementia. The bonding, we're setting aside a sacred time. We're creating a sacred, maybe it's 20 minutes a week or whatever it is, but this little sacred oasis of just a little bubble around us. This is all that's happening. We're going to connect, we're going to bond, we're going to refill our buckets a little bit, and let everything else keep flying by outside the bubble. So
I love it. This is I love how the book is outlined, and the aspects of having a music playlist while you're working on this, bringing the generations in, and from experiencing Loretta, and her workshop firsthand, there's so much creativity that can be involved. And I imagine you can have sort of just open play where you're just, sitting there chatting and putting pieces together. But then you can also have sort of these assignments of where, let's create something that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a section in here we talk about celebrating free play. In it, I discuss someone I was working with for many years. He was the mid to late stages of the disease of dementia. We would have the same conversation over and over again. He was one of my fastest builders. Still loved building with Lego. He loved the minifigures and the accessories. And I would have to be ready with another base plate. He would fill up a whole base plate. I'd be ready with a new one. We'd push the one aside and he'd be building in the second one. We usually used to fill up like 3 base plates in a 50-minute session. One day, the administrator walked by and said, he used to be an engineer. Have him build a building or a bridge or something like that. And I was like, okay. He never seemed interested in the building blocks themselves, but I'm always willing to try something new, right? So I asked him, I says, Bernie, would you mind if we build a bridge or something? And he just stopped. He just like literally shut down. And I was like, oh, if you don't remember how to do that, or if you don't know how, that's okay. I'll help you. We'll do it together. And so I took out the building blocks. I said, here, I'm putting down a block here. You put one on top. And completely shut down, would not engage, would not do anything. And I was like, okay, this is not working. I was like, never mind, go back to build whatever you want. And he went right back to building. So with seniors, especially those in the mid to late stages, I don't like to recommend that. What I like to do with them is to just show them what you can do with the bricks and let them decide what they want to do. Some of them are fascinated with the minifigures and the animals. They just love looking at them. They look at them and it reminds them of animals they had in the past, or people they had in the past, or whatever. I mean, they have the whole thing going on in their heads, right? So it's not up to me to decide what they want to build, and then some of them love the colors and they will build abstract buildings with one color or towers or whatever, so I love free play, and I do that with children, with adults, with seniors, everybody.
I love it. I love it. Let me make sure that I address some of the questions, comments, and things that are kind of coming in here. And what I love about this, and there's so many things in this space where, like, I remember when the senior move management business started to come around, and there was people all over the country doing the same thing, but they had never been connected to each other. And when I say that you're involved with the movement here, I think these comments are really showing through. We got Natalia who says, I'm here from Oregon. I developed and piloted a cognitive activity intervention for older adults using Lego bricks, and I'm inspired by your work and looking forward to hearing about this project. We've got Veronica, who's at an Erickson senior living community, and she says, I love Legos. We've got where are we at here? I saw my friend Ken Silverstein, who's at the Friends Club, and he has a member who's an avid Lego builder, and he shared with everybody in the program the presentation on the history of Lego, and then and some of the pieces that he has put together. And then we've got Barbara Sullivan, who's the executive director of the Village to Village Network, and she says that her daughter-in-law is a Lego brand manager. The company is a super family friendly, and I think that they would love to be a part of this. And I think I don't know if Loretta is still around there. I know you ducked behind the curtain there, Loretta. But when
I'm here.
Yeah, but when I heard you give your presentation to
Yes.
the Caregivers Conference,
Mhm.
I had no idea that Lego has this division called Serious Play. Like, I
Yes,
think
indeed.
most of us have really think of this as a kid's toy.
Yeah.
And I think the company, well, first off, before you answer the question about Serious Play, does the company know what you all are doing in this area of dementia, and do they support you all?
That's a great question. Lego is a multi-billion-dollar company, and I'm sure they're aware of what we're all doing. I haven't had a specific conversation with them, but all my Lego friends and community all support what we're doing here. So I'm sure that they will reach out to us, when the book becomes a little bit more people are aware of it. I think they'll definitely talk to us.
I can address that a little bit as well. I've been to Lego headquarters in Denmark twice, and I am going again in June. And I think when you think about all the different areas they're in, they don't, to the question, have we reached out to them? They don't typically reach out to individuals, but a movement is something different. You're not going to just walk in there and, I'm trying to get a tour. I sent feelers out. So I've got a few responses. So we're going to see what happens with that. My mother and I were fortunate to be featured in a Lego Serious Play Facilitator magazine. And that article generated some invites. So I am going across the pond to do that. And, I think we've heard already, Patty shared how we met. It's interesting. I can't wait to link with Natalia, because I searched and searched. The people in Europe were saying to me, you're the only person doing this work. I knew I wasn't, but it took me a minute to find Patty. And then when we met, then we were just stuck together. I flew to Oregon, and we went to her house. People were like, I can't believe you're going to somebody's house you never met. I was like, oh, she's amazing. So we just, Lego people, we have our own thing. So we just
Lego people are awesome.
We had known each other our whole time. But what has been amazing is, it'll be interesting to see what I can do on this trip. I am leading a Lego Serious Play session in Amsterdam, which is really the reason for the trip. But I'm not going that far without going to Lego headquarters. But I'll be leading a team of folks who make interactive sort of games, very high level, for folks with dementia. That's how they picked me to be a speaker. Very thrilled about that. And it's funny because when I met with them, I talked to them about Patty's book. And so it was very cool, and talked a little bit about Laura's background. So I think, we just keep doing this work and then see. But Lego Serious Play is something that was created by Lego, just briefly. And the word that should excite all of us is the word interactive, Steve, which is what you started with. It's all about changing meetings. It was created to help organizations listen and communicate more effectively, right? And their sort of motto is, it includes all people and everybody has a voice. Ding. That means including people with dementia. It does not say everybody with a voice except people with dementia. And so that was the thing for me. So I I became a trained facilitator in the Lego Serious Play method. My teacher was a 30-year former Lego employee. And so, you're getting the best of the best. And he was one of the creators of the method. But it really works. I also do in the late stage exactly as Patty described, where you just let them sort of free play. Ooh, let's wait to see what you come up with. In the early stages, they can still follow some direction. And so the Lego Serious Play just quickly has 4 parts. You give them a task. So build your favorite, childhood memory, and they just go to town. Or build your bucket list, because once they are diagnosed, it does not mean their bucket list has gone away. They still want to do stuff. They go to town on the build their bucket list thing. And so, you want to just catch them where you are, as you saw on the table of contents. And so that's been sort of, my thing. So everybody, is given their task, they build, they share, and then we kind of reflect on what we've heard. And they can do a lot of reflecting. They reminisce and they do all, kinds of things. Is it okay if I show the picture?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
All right. So
Please. I just want to mention when I started researching the book, I did a complete search of Legos and seniors and found nothing at the time.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago. And now, people are popping up all over the place. It's amazing. I love it. I love it.
Really.
It is cool. And so as Patty was saying, this is a late stage group that I was working with, and look at the focus of the people in these pictures. It is really incredible. The person on the left looks like they're looking for just that right piece in that pile. And it's so exciting. It's like, where's that piece? I know it's right there. But check out the person on the right. Look at the focus like there. What am I going to do with that piece? But what I really want to draw your attention to is the piece under the arrow that I drew on the screen. Yep. If you are a Lego person, you know that piece is upside down. So it's very close to the experience that Patty described, where the woman put the thing down and spun it, not at all what you would be expecting, but that's what you want too. So I had never seen, very much like Patty, I had never seen anybody turn anything upside down. And so I was like, look at yours. It's upside down. I'm so excited. It doesn't take much to excite me, but I'm so excited. And so she looks at me for the longest time. And then she says, well, of course it's upside down. It's just like my brain.
Oh, wow.
Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
wow.
So you're like, ding. That's what I'm talking about. And so she clearly understood that there was some sort of disconnect in her brain. Found out later, she had been a teacher or something at University of Maryland for like 30 some years in physics, or one of them things that are way over my head. And so look at that, power. And so I think that's, kind of important for us to get, that they can still be so, very creative. And, look at the woman in the light brown sweater. She didn't build anything until she separated everything by color. Now, don't be fooled by that picture on the left. The lady with her arms crossed, she looked like she's disengaged, but she's upset because the rest of them are building too slow. She's ready to build something else. Like Patty's like, they want another place. So she's like, what's taking y'all so long? So and the lady in the red top, she's like, okay, when are they gonna finish so we can move on to something else? They done filled their plate up and they ready to do something else. Meanwhile, the other people are still adding on to their thing. But it's so much fun, and you never know, what you're going to get. So these were kind of late stage people. And look at that. There's the big table. And the 2 women on the end, they refused to go to dinner when it was time for dinner. And so that was funny. So I stayed an additional hour. But the pieces on the right, that's Patty's description of art.
Yeah, I love it. And there's
folks in the late, and they hung that up for a while. It's really cool. And a lot of times senior centers or memory care facilities, if they have a blank wall in the hallway on the way to the dining room, it's a nice thing to do, is to put their artwork up, because it's, it's like when we bought, our little ugly stuff home that we made at school and our parents put it on the refrigerator. It's just like that. They oohed and awed and cheered for us, just like, and now we're doing that in reverse. Think about that. And I cheered for every single thing my mother made. I don't care what it looked like. We would just cheer and laugh. And my mom was just, crazy, for it. This is earlier mid-stage, and we built a world without Alzheimer's in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I taught the little kids what Alzheimer's was, and everything they made, the person would say, in a world without Alzheimer's, and finish the sentence. So one little 6-year-old, this is the intergenerational center, by the way, pre-K and kindergarten, and then adult day in the same facility. Generations Crossing, that's what the name of it is. And this little girl built a bus, and she held the bus up and she said, in a world without Alzheimer's, my Grammy would remember how to get on the bus and remember to stop to get off.
Man.
There you have that. And so it took us 9 hours to build that village that you're looking at. And so, you really can do, anything. You just meet them where they were. The people who could follow the task built what they thought was, a world without also. People didn't understand the task. They just built some art. We shoved it in there anyway. And so you just take what you get and be happy about it.
I love it. And I told you, I was waiting for this question to come in. I told you it was going to come
about
in.
the big, yes.
Veronica asks, how do I keep residents with dementia from eating the pieces? But then Ruth also talks about the, dexterity and things like that.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how you evaluate and the different options, folks.
Since when I started this, I had started specifically in memory care communities. So the folks I was working with were in the mid to late stages of the disease. So I instinctively took Duplo, which is much larger. Mm-hmm. So LEGO makes what they call 3 systems of play. The traditional Lego pieces that you saw in the pictures and the pieces that Loretta has behind her, those are, and the picture behind our screen, those are traditionally called system bricks, right? The traditional Lego everyone is familiar with. Then they made Duplo, which they made for toddlers. They made them larger. In fact, it's called Duplo because it's double the size of the traditional bricks. And they made them specifically for toddlers so that they could not choke on them. In fact, each Duplo piece goes through what LEGO calls a choke test. So you cannot choke on these pieces. And then I like using them also because of their size. Like someone had mentioned, all arthritis, there's manual dexterity, there's depth perception issues with some folks in this population. So Duplo is just so much easier. It just fits so nicely in your hands. They're great. I mean, the animals, the smiles, they're just amazing. It's one of the things I'd love LEGO if they would do, if I had a dream, my ultimate dream is to market specifically to this population, right?
Yeah.
To change the packaging, because I get a lot of pushback from people and they feel like, oh, I'm giving a child's toy to my mom or my grandparent. It's like, but this is the perfect piece for them. The traditional Lego are great. I love them. I mean, I build with them all the time, but they're hard to manipulate if you have arthritis, or if you
they
can't
pick
see
the
them.
people to come and deal with it. That's very true. I do have here are the folks in at Sunrise using the Duplo, and my mother only could do the regular size probably because we had done it our whole lives. So I show up with both, and then people can choose what works best for them. Especially if there's a partner there or several people from the organization is there as well. So I think that helps a lot too. So I always ask people, they can get the kits 2 different ways that I have. If they're building together, they have Duplo and that, which is really cool. And then like today, I'm doing all Duplo this afternoon. So yeah.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I found that interesting too, because I worked at a couple of day centers that had a children's site, daycare on
Yes.
site, right? So they would bring them out every time I would come out, and they would put a senior in every other seat, and they would put a child in every other seat, and they would come out. And I've had so many experiences where people just love the activity so much that they would, like, the care workers at the memory care community would bring their children, or families
Mm-hmm.
of the residents would come knowing that I was going to be there. And kids, it didn't matter what age they were, they didn't care that it was Duplo. Like, it was Lego.
True.
As far as they were concerned, it was Lego. It didn't
It's true.
matter that it was the big blocks, or if it was the little. Nobody
Very
cares,
true.
And another good thing when you look at the images and what you just said about families coming, Natalia, our friend from Oregon, says another aspect to remember: even those who don't build are watching and they're engaged. And
Oh, that's very true.
yes,
yeah, and
very, very true.
I imagine you may have some folks that maybe for the first couple of weeks when you're doing this aren't doing anything and you don't really think much of it, but they're observing and they're enjoying and they're watching, and that's great.
Yeah.
Ritza,
I even have a section in the book that talks about those that refuse to build.
Yes.
Right. Because I've
Yeah.
always, I've been to a lot of communities, and I'd always have one or two people like, I don't play with toys. I'm like, okay, but I'm going to put these here just in case you change your mind, and then they see everybody else laughing and having conversations and just having a good time. I was going to one community in California where I went there for 3 months, and it was the same response every week. I went there weekly, and this one woman just refused. I don't play with toys. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to leave these here in case you change your mind. Every week for 3 months. Then one day I walk over and she's got 2 rows of minifigures facing each other, right? They were males. And I was like, did you want a female or an animal, or can I get you something else? She's like, no. She's like, you see this guy standing over here on the side? I'm like, yes. He's a recruiter for the NFL, and these are college football players playing. She says, I think it's ridiculous to build without a story. And I was like, wow, that's what was holding her back. She thought that just playing just for the sake of playing was wrong, and she needed to incorporate a story into that. And
Patty, Christy brought up, and I was thinking the same thing, is that we kind of got sidetracked on Duplo, but you'd mentioned 3 systems: the traditional Duplo,
right.
What's the third one?
The third one is Technic. So anytime you see any type of Lego movement, trains, the great ball contraption, which is literally taking a ball from one place to another, motors, gears, robotics, that's all.
Here's a Techniques piece right here.
Right. And they're usually in combination with system bricks. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you see anything moving, motors, robotics, programming. Yeah.
This is on the Lego site, the Technic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they make amazing things.
Yeah.
Construction, the cars, the planes, the trains. I mean, it's just amazing. It's a whole other line.
And
it is.
One of the things that I'm seeing in the chat, and I recommend everybody, don't worry, I'm going to save the chat. You're going to have the recording and all that type of stuff. But we've got people, they're talking about, working with adults with intellectual disabilities. You know, like, there's so many ways this can be applied, but and today the talk is dementia and Alzheimer's. But for those of you that are in senior living communities, this is a great intergenerational activity for people that might not have cognitive impairment.
That's right.
Especially when you see the Technic product line, I could totally see a group of engineers in a senior living community coming together and working with some kids, and just how positive this can be. And then the same product could be used in the building for assisted living and memory impairment.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of Lego, right? It appeals to so many different people and so many different, interests. Like I came at it from an artistic point of view. It's a great medium to make mosaics. I love building mosaics with my Lego. And when I introduced it to kids, they're like, I didn't know you could make art with Lego. I'm like, you can build anything with Lego. I know she is a mechanical engineer, and they were working on such a difficult project, and it was like they were building this modular that was supposed to work with a whole bunch of different departments, and they were having a really hard time explaining the project. And so one of the team members was a fan of Lego, and her boss said to her, hey, could you build this out of Lego so we can like describe it better? And she's like, absolutely. And so she did.
That's
and
cool.
Of course,
Okay, we got a couple of questions that came in from Ruth and Ken that are talking about, can you please address a little bit how you address this to people that might seem that this is childish, that you're playing with toys? And, I could see not only participants potentially being that way, but you could also see like adult children. It's like, why is my mom playing with toys? She's a college professor and stuff like that. How do you address that?
I could talk about that because as with my history and as an activity coordinator and from the facility standpoint, it's really ingrained in me. And so that's I would say my major or only sticking point that it's a little bit hard for me to get over is that. And I would love to see Lego or somebody develop pieces that maybe look a little bit different, so they look a little bit less, quote unquote childlike. But that being said, I think there is so much benefit to these, and there are a lot of ways to go about addressing that. And I think one of the things that comes to mind is a quote from Teepa Snow. It's not the dementia that robs our loved ones of their dignity. It's how we respond to them. And so a lot of times when it's the family members, the adult children, seeing oh, that's my mom and she's a college graduate and she would never play with toys, that's the grief talking. That's the not being able to accept that person where they are right now. And so when we're able to process our emotions and feel our grief and accept the moment for what it is and just be where we are, then that resistance can go away. And then as far as the participants themselves, if they're like Patty was saying, some people I don't play, like, well, that's a very it's a wonderful thing for somebody to feel that identity of themselves and be able to express themselves in that way. And so we should be, reinforcing that. Say, yes, you've done a lot of important, things throughout your life. You haven't necessarily had a chance to play. And then you can be talking about it as you're putting it together and asking their opinions and like, gosh, do you think that, the red goes with the yellow or whatever? You can also, or they'll just start, if you have it there, they can just start on their own. Or you can talk about it like, so the kids are coming later and we're going to, we need to get these in order for the kids to come. And then so for a lot of people, that's just all of the permission, quote unquote, to get started. Just like, okay, well then, so there's a lot of different ways to tackle that. But I would say it's something that essentially just boils down to, let's just be where we are right now. And
okay, got a couple of great comments in there, folks. Keep them coming. This is so great to see how community is centered around this wonderful topic. But Martha asks, where can I purchase a starter kit for a disabled individual with Downs who is not verbal? But yeah, like what would you all recommend if somebody is listening to this today, whether it's a loved one with a cognitive disability, with Alzheimer's, or just, somebody who's living in assisted living? What would be an ideal starter set and way to get this kicked off?
It's a great question. I think it depends on the individual. So with seniors, if again, with the mid to late stages, I would recommend starting with a base plate and then the Duplo brick box. Those, because then it's a general box and it's got a whole bunch of different types of pieces, and you'll figure out what they gravitate to, right? Are they interested in the building blocks? Then you buy more of those. Are they interested in the animals and the people and the accessories? Then you focus on buying more of those. Those with cognitives like Down syndrome or autism, try to find out what they're into, right? So are they into trains, planes, automobiles? Are they into, the superheroes? Are they into Star Wars? I mean, Lego makes so many different lines. You could find something that someone is interested in and they're just gonna love it.
Now, from a shopping perspective, is your all's is the best thing to do, go right to the Lego site or Target? Or, I mean, one thing that whenever I bring this up, everybody always says the same thing. I had boxes and boxes of these Legos that I just gave away to a kid down the street. I wish I had held on to them. I guess there's a great aftermarket out there if you're of interest.
There absolutely is. I recommend the classic box, which, as Patty said, has a lot of different things in it. And they make that in both. They make the classic box, which is $29 something on Amazon and Target, Walmart, everywhere. And they make the classic box, which classic just meaning variety. And then they make a Duplo version of that as well. And if you're looking for, there's some really specific Duplo people and animals under the Lego education side of the house too. I bought my mother always wanted to run away from home. So I bought her on Lego education. I bought her their education set that had doors and windows. So when you put it in your little house, it opens. And I have my mother's house here that she built. And she could, until she was 91, she could still open the doors and windows. So that was the beauty of that. So the people, some of the best of the people that Patty's talking about, I got from Lego Education. They're probably 65 very diverse people in the kits. And so I think, as Patty said, when you have a variety of things they can gravitate to, that is half the battle, and it's really it's really cool.
And while you're talking, I just pulled up Amazon and typed in Lego Classic Box, and what's really cool is to see, I had no idea all these varieties. So they've got these classic boxes, but then you can sort of pick out the different here's one with bricks and animals, and then here's one building toy set, and then as you see, you can kind of get down and you can see the Duplo classic brick set.
Correct. So yeah, I was going to mention most of those were system. There was only one that was Duplo, know, but if you go to the Lego website, I also like to let people know that, Lego can be expensive. So, especially for communities, what I recommend is send out a mass email to your residents and say, hey, do you have any Duplo in your basement or attic that you could donate to us? Thrift stores, someone said, Tiffany said, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. But Craigslist, usually you're getting a bucket filled with lots of stuff. So half of it tends to be Lego and sorry.
I don't mean to cut you off, but because that addresses Veronica's question. And she says, I'm germophobic. How do you keep the pieces clean and sanitized, especially if using them as a group?
Yes, absolutely. So I always say, if you buy Lego secondhand, the first thing you're going to do is wash it.
Clean them.
It's the first thing you're going to do because you have no idea where it came from. And Lego, Lego's super easy to wash. It really is. You
Yeah.
put it in a bucket of warm water with some dish soap, rinse it around, and then just really rinse it very well and rinse it clean, from all the soap. And then the easiest way is to lay it on a towel. And depending on where you live, when I was living in Pacific, I took all day because it was very humid there, but if you live in a dry area, it's going to take a few minutes to dry. It depends on where you live, because water loves the nooks and crannies of Lego. So just make sure it's dry before you put it into a sealed container.
Yes.
So, but it's easy to wash. It's easy to clean. I've heard people actually spray like bleach. I don't know if I'm really a fan of that, but you could do that as well if you're really concerned. But I think soapy water is good enough.
That's great. And I love this here. Elizabeth Barkis says, I love to play with Play-Doh too.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I think this is one of these things where folks, I think, this dialogue is just so wonderful because it's looking at these things. I saw a reference to erector sets, Lincoln logs, things of that nature. I mean, this can be inspirational, and it could lead to additional what we referred to as toys. They're devices. It's like saying that only children can use crayons. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Or paintbrushes or coloring books or things like that. This is really
so true. And this is the whole point of, being able to engage in something where there's no danger of them getting hurt, right? This is the whole point of choice and control, right? Everything has been taken away from them, right? Like I mentioned in my story, what they eat, when they go to bed, what they wear, everything's been taken away. So to give someone the ability to make a choice, I mean, my greatest joy is seeing someone in a wheelchair reach over to the table to grab that one piece that they have to have for their build. I mean, that is like amazing, right? The thought, you were talking about concentration. I mean, I with my Lego community, I was invited to a tree trimming party, and at one point there were 18 adults all standing around making Lego ornaments for a Christmas tree, and not a single person was talking. Everyone was so engrossed in what they were doing and having so much fun building ornaments, and it was amazing. I've seen that with children, even those who have trouble focusing, focus on Lego, right? So yeah.
Oh man, Patty, I am blown away at that idea of creating Christmas ornaments or holiday ornaments out of Legos. Your trees look different every single year, and it's this engaged activity. And I can almost see it like one of those. What's the little thing? Actually, Lego even makes, what's the calendar box where you open up?
The Advent calendar.
Oh, the Advent calendar.
Yeah, they have several of them now.
We had that with the kids, but wouldn't it be cool to have a little tree, a bunch of Legos, and every day you make a new ornament? I mean,
ornament.
And these are ideas that could be great in all of our homes, but really, when you look at a senior living residence, what a fun activity that the staff, that the residents, that the families can all participate together in. Yeah. I love this. I'm looking at the clock, and I knew this was going to happen. This hour blew by like
it did.
And so this is definitely not going to be the last time we all get together to talk about this topic. And the good news is that we got through all the questions. There are so many awesome comments in chat. I will have a copy of all of this, the recording podcast, later this afternoon, and links to the book, links to Loretta's website, links to Brick by Brick Bonding. But any sort of closing comments that y'all want to make before we take off and get ready for the weekend? And I think there's going to be a bunch of people shopping for Legos this weekend.
Well, I want to just. Yeah, go play. I love Lego. I don't know if your audience is aware, is a a phrase, that a Danish phrase saying "leg godt," the word Lego, which means play well.
Play well.
And so, play well. Thank you everyone for being here. I am enjoying I saved the chat because I want to go back and read everything that everyone said. And I agree with Tiffany. I don't like to use bleach. Vinegar definitely is much better. It's just, I've heard it from some people. So I just wanted to put it out there. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having us, Steve.
You bet.
Thanks, Steve.